I wanted to do an experiment where I watched some of my favorite directors' early short films, because I wanted to see if they were actually good at the same age I am now. I'm not sure about you, but in film school, I learnt like 1,000 times, before you bend the rules, you have to learn them. That's interesting to me, because they never said when you can start to bend them. You're just supposed to have some sort of sixth sense that tells you, okay, now I can start making the real stuff. It kind of leaves you scared to take any risks, which is sad because those same risks are exactly what fuel your creative ambition. All these questions led me to want to do a little experiment. I took 3 directors who I really respect, and I've gone back and watched their early work from when they were my age. All the people I chose have really distinctive styles. You could point to them and say that's their film. I wondered if it was something that was just ever present with them, or if it came later in their career. Basically, the idea of this video is I'm going to note some criteria that I think makes these directors so special and what I consider their style. And then I'm going to go watch one short film from each that I've chosen to see if it fits in with that distinctive style. I'm also just intrigued to see if these films are actually good. I want to see how they compare to my own short films even. So the first director I decided to look into was Wes Anderson, just because I think he has one of the most distinctive styles in modern cinema. Like, I could show you 2 seconds of a Wes Anderson movie and you know instantly. The short film I'm gonna watch is called Bottle Rocket, and actually turned into his first feature film. So for my quick checklist of what I think makes a Wes Anderson film, I think first and most important is his attention to detail, how every single element of the film, like the set design, the costuming, the props, every minor detail has to be so particular. Which kind of moves into my next point about his use of color. It's bold, it's highly saturated, and I think it's essential to how Wes Anderson manages to transport you to his eccentric worlds that he creates. Symmetry is probably the other most distinctive feature of his work. It's how he creates harmonious pictures in every shot that seem to just perfectly balance each other out. It's the exhibition of his films that are so important. It's not the realism. And so now to see if they're actually present in Bottle Rocket. Just a quick synopsis to get you up to speed. Bottle Rocket is about, should have read it first. It follows 2 dysfunctional friends, Anthony and Dignan, who basically hatch and try and execute a robbery with their other friend Bob. It's pretty simple, and surprisingly even simple visually. I'm gonna rip this band-aid right off. I've probably already shown you a clip, but it's in black and white. What the fuck? That's probably the most distinctive feature of his films, is his use of color. And one of his early short films that eventually got turned into his first feature film was in black and white. But I guess what surprised me even more was that this wasn't a visually oriented film. It was more focused around the story and really well written, witty characters. It was the way he turned a robbery, an otherwise dark scenario, into something really wacky. And I think that's something that I actually take for granted in his films nowadays, is how he manages to make everything feel very light and heartwarming. How he connects you emotionally to the characters is actually super important. It's hard to not focus on the enormity of the mise-en-scène, how picturesque it is and how perfect everything is. The characters always have this lovable rascal quality to them. This short film, bar maybe like 1 or 2 shots, had none of the distinctive visual style I would have expected. It used a lot of handheld, shaky shots, which you don't see really ever in a Wes Anderson movie now. And at points, the audio is honestly not that great. A lot of the time, when you're making short films at this age, the practical limitations you have kind of inform a lot of creative decision making, because knowing your limitations and playing to them is absolutely essential to being able to make a short film. Sometimes you have to make the black and white short film so you can eventually experiment with your visual style. And I'd say focusing on dialogue and witty characters is probably the most budget-friendly way to make a short film. All you need is 2 people who can make an audience laugh, and you've got something entertaining. It's a long cry away from what Wes Anderson films look like now, but the heart of the film, you can see a nugget of what would be to come. Alright, let's move on to my next example, the Eggman, as I like to call him. Can we Photoshop a photo of Robert Eggers as Eggman from Sonic? We'll see how well that worked in this edit, whether or not this is on screen now. I do think Robert Eggers is one of the most exciting directors working right now. I'd argue I haven't seen a bad film from him yet. And once again, he has one of the most distinctive styles in modern cinema. I know I just said that, but I promise these are 2 people who do have the most distinctive styles in modern cinema. He has a very specific story he likes to tell as well. It's obvious from just the posters of his films. He obviously makes a lot of horror movies. but more specifically, he's really focused on folklore. And the most important thing that I think separates his stories from others in the gothic horror sort of space is his attention to detail in terms of historical accuracy. It's about creating an environment that feels really true, it feels lived out, and it feels honest, despite the fact that the time period is completely different to anything we can understand. Everything from the dialogue, the costumes, the props, they need to be really accurate to the time, which is no small feat. And the short film that I've chosen to watch, I think it'll be no surprise, is Hansel and Gretel. It was a 30-minute short film he made when he was... Come on, tell me. Sorry, my producer will be back in 1 second. While we wait for him to Google that, how are you today? Are you doing good? What's your favorite movie? Has life been passing too fast for you? Can you still maintain an erection? If you grew wings tomorrow, where would you go? I've just gotten word that Robert Eggers was 24 when he made Hansel and Gretel. Thank you to Cam behind the camera. Really derailed myself. Fuck. I don't think I even need to go through a synopsis of this movie. We all know the story of Hansel and Gretel. And it's probably the least surprising thing I've ever heard that one of his early short films was him making a 30-minute silent black and white adaptation of the story. Yes, I did say silent, unfortunately for me who watched it. And it's scored with some of the most dramatic and incessant strings I've ever heard. I could probably give you a quick taster here. And yes, this was throughout the whole film. It was a very long watch at 26 minutes. I think the most ready comparison you can give it is to The Lighthouse because they're both in black and white, but the difference is just unbelievable. Even in the lighting, when you look at a shot from The Lighthouse, even though it's in black and white, you can tell how dramatic the shadows are and how well it's lit. There's no intention to the lighting in Hansel and Gretel. Also, the use of close-ups is, even if at points disorienting like he was probably intending, makes it so hard to follow what's going on. Not to mention that it's silent, so I'm already struggling. But every single frame is like, here. I'm getting word from my producer that Robert Eggers might have been 23. I'm sorry for the mix-up.
I deeply and sincerely apologize.
Thank you, Cameron. Honestly, without the fact that Hansel and Gretel was just such a well-told story, I would have had no idea what the fuck was happening. But what's so interesting to me is that it's exactly the sort of story Robert Eggers would tell nowadays, but it's just without the budget that he's gone on to have. And so it made just a really, I guess, indifferent telling of the story. It's not like Nosferatu or The Northman, which put a really interesting spin on stories we might already know or folklore we've heard of. It was a genuine attempt at that, and I can see exactly how he got to where he is today from this. But I'd just say it was a poor attempt, which is interesting when thinking about my when to experiment idea, because you'd argue it was good he experimented with that form so he could later get some of his classic films, but it was more of a long-term project because nobody's going back and watching this 30-minute silent black and white short film. It's interesting to note just about your own expectations of your films. Not everything has to be perfect, and it won't be perfect. I think we can all learn that as filmmakers, but it's still important to hone your craft, to learn what works and what doesn't, because you won't create anything unique without it. And you'd have to argue it's something that Robert Eggers learned to do over time, how to balance a need for accuracy with a want to entertain people. I'll move on to my last point, which was kind of something that was uncovered to me through researching Bottle Rocket, in how often somebody's short film can get turned into their first feature. And I learned that one of my favorite feature films, something you should really go and watch, Shiva Baby, was first a short film. It's directed by Seligman. I can't say I've watched any of her other work, but I really, really love this film. And I really wanted to see what the difference between it as a feature film and what sort of embryonic stage it was at as a short film. If you've watched Shiva Baby, I think you'll know what's so important to it. It's that chaotic energy. The shots are tight, the dialogue is overlapping, and the music is overbearing. The tension reaches just unbearable levels, and I'm intrigued to see if the same thing can be achieved in a 10-minute short film. For those who haven't seen the film, it's basically about a college student who goes to a Jewish funeral service and runs into a sugar daddy there. It's about as awkward as it sounds. And the short film really did feel like a proof of concept. I don't know about the intentions behind making it, but the vibe that I got was she made this short film with the express intention of creating a longer story. It had some of the key things on my checklist. It did have that close-up claustrophobic style. I'm mainly saying it feels like a proof of concept though, because it feels like the bones of what would later become the feature film. And look, I may be biased because I watched the feature first. It's completely within the cards. But a lot of the things that I thought made the feature so special weren't really evident in the short film. But I guess, and this makes sense, it's exactly those things that would usually take a bigger budget to achieve. It's some of the camera work which isn't quite as ambitious. It's the lack of a score which is the beating heart of the feature film. And it's the way the editing isn't nearly as frantic as it would come to be in the feature. But you know it is there. Once again, the writing and the concept. They're the most clear things that I think all three of these examples have focused on. Because you can flesh out the other stuff if given a bigger budget, but you have to focus on what you can. And this short feels like someone's super confident on that nugget of an idea, and they're selling you on that. So I want to go into a few of my takeaways. I've kind of touched on it throughout, but in a practical sense, a lot of these films had to be more story driven. The visual flair I might know from these directors isn't really here yet. They focused on an idea because that's what makes a short film special. There's going to be a lot of practical limitations and you have to take those in stride. And you just have to be confident in that thing you're making. I mean, for Christ's sake, 2 of the short films I watched today were in black and white, which eliminates a lot of the cinematography-based problems that might come up otherwise. And I guess this leads me to my main point. I've seen today that none of these short films were really at the level of the director's later works, but they all had one little special thing that the directors honed in throughout their careers. I mean, both Bottle Rocket and Shiva Baby got turned into feature films because of the potential they showed. And sure, they were rough around the edges, I'm not going to deny that. But that's something that's always going to be the case without massive resources. They all knew there was gold in their ideas somewhere, and they just had to find a way to show it. You have to consider your intentions behind making the short film. Is it to later make that same short film into a feature? Or is it even just a chance to hone in your craft? I mean, I'm a big fan of Robert Eggers, but that short film was dookie. But there's no doubt that it was an important stepping stone to what would come later. Because I guess it still has the core of his later films, but just maybe without as deft of a touch. So I think what I've learned is that not everything has to be a masterpiece. Like, it's still important to try and make something the best it can be, but that's exactly it. It can only be so good, with so many practical limitations that come at the start of your career. And something else I've learned is you really should start embedding your own voice straight away into your work. Because the way all these directors that I've talked about today embedded their own voice into these short films is what made them go on to have such successful careers. And another thing, just watching these, it does give me confidence. Because, and this might sound really big-headed, I don't think my short film, Frazzled, compares all that badly to them. It's got a lot of problems, probably a lot more technical problems, but I'm still confident in the story. And that's what I'm taking away, is you have to be confident in that idea. And it should give you confidence in yourself too.